Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
If I had to guess, I would say that it was a largely political decision.
A BC judge pauses a law banning drug use in some public spaces.
We're going to review the impact of this court decision.
The province says treating addiction and public safety are key. Plus,
I went back out to the guy in the parking lot and said, no, I got to pay after the weekend.
a Vancouver Island man warns about scammers he says paved his driveway. A company in Ontario says they're using its name. And seriously? From complaints about haircuts to lost nose rings, we share the top 10 nuisance calls to 911 in BC.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. A BC Supreme Court judge has put a pause on legislation banning drug use in public spaces, citing, quote, irreparable harm. The provincial government was several months into a 3-year decriminalization pilot when the NDP brought in restrictions. As Mira Baines explains, those rules banned illegal substance use in public parks, transit stops, and on beaches.
Living in a tent in Vancouver's downtown east side, David Pigott says he has nowhere else to go. Last month, BC passed a new law banning drug use in public spaces like parks. Now the BC Supreme Court has pressed pause on the law.
I don't know how I feel about that because I use in my tent and so that it's not out in the open, and my biggest concern is kids.
The province was working to decriminalize some amounts of illicit drugs to help deal with the overdose crisis. But in the face of pressure from communities, it banned drug use on beaches, at transit stops, and in front of businesses. That makes it more dangerous, say advocates for drug users, because it pushes them to use drugs in isolation, away from life-saving services.
If I had to guess, I would say that it was a largely political decision. And with all due respect, I think it was one very deeply rooted in stigma.
Some communities who say they're overwhelmed by crime are disappointed.
I think the vast majority of British Columbians are really very tired and frustrated by the open use of drugs that they know eventually and often prove deadly to their fellow citizens.
A big concern, whether police could force drug users to leave public spaces.
Our members no longer have the authority to ask someone to leave in the rare circumstances where they do find them using illicit drugs in problematic circumstances, like in places, for example, where children are likely to be found.
The province says treating addiction while addressing public safety concerns are key to how BC moves forward.
We're going to review the impact of this court decision and possible responses by the government.
The court will take until the end of March to look at whether the public use ban violates charter rights. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Health officials say 2 children have now died from flu-related illnesses in our province.
So these are quite concerning, especially because these are rare events usually, and they are quite tragic. And so, we watch these quite closely and try and investigate them because they give us a sense of what's happening with the influenza season.
The BC Centre for Disease Control says flu in children is at the highest levels since the start of this respiratory season. They're reminding you to get vaccinated to avoid getting really sick and to stay home if you feel ill. 4 people have now been killed in 2 separate crashes on Highway 5 north of Kamloops yesterday. There have been more than a dozen deaths on that highway this year alone. RCMP and Highway Patrol are currently on Highway 5 to ensure safe driving this holiday weekend. Local leaders say the grim toll is having a serious effect on first responders. We have another major highway shutdown to tell you about tonight. A semi-rollover has closed Highway 1 in both directions in Chilliwack. The RCMP says a truck full of vegetables rolled over near the Prest Road overpass. Police say vegetables spilled out all over the highway. No injuries have been reported. Drive BC says traffic is being diverted onto exit ramps. Eastbound lanes of Highway 1 are expected to remain closed for several hours as crews clean up. Westbound lanes may reopen a bit earlier. Winnipeg police say they have shot and killed a man during a hostage situation on Thursday. They claim that man was a suspect in the death of a BC truck driver who vanished in Winnipeg a week ago. Zubina Ahmed has more.
Dozens of officers outside. a hostage situation inside. Winnipeg police blocked streets around this West Broadway apartment Thursday afternoon. A man had taken a 19-year-old woman into a third-floor suite against her will.
We'd reason to believe the male that retreated was armed.
Police say another woman, a man and a child were also inside Furby Street apartment. The man escaped off the balcony and the woman and child were released. Just after 5, police broke down the door and went inside.
The female hostage was secured and safely taken into care. The male hostage taker was shot by police during the rescue, and he died at the scene.
It was tense hours for the people living in the block. Dennis Cullard has lived here for more than a decade.
About 1 in the afternoon, I started with a whole bunch of screaming, and I ended up looking through the peephole and saw a police officer walking down the hallway. And from there, it just started banging on the door, and it very quickly escalated from there. Here, a man screaming, yelling, and a woman screaming along with him, I guess she was trying to get out of the apartment.
Police say the hostage taker was known to them.
He is a 52-year-old male. He had an extensive criminal record for violence and weapons offenses. He was on a few weapons prohibitions at the time of this offense.
This was not the first time police were at the building this week. On Wednesday, officers were there investigating a homicide on the 5th floor.
The hostage taker is considered a person of interest for that homicide.
The homicide victim is a 34-year-old truck driver, Farah Mohammed. He was reported missing on December 22nd after making a delivery from Vancouver to Winnipeg. His body was found on Boxing Day inside the same apartment block. No arrests have been made in connection to his death, and the homicide unit is investigating. Sabina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A North Saanich man wants to warn you after he says he was scammed by 2 people who paved his driveway. And as Karis Hogg explains, a business owner in Ontario says the scammers are doing shoddy work under his company's name.
2 weeks ago, a man knocked on Jim Gower's door and offered to repave his driveway. He said he worked for Flocon Construction.
Said he had some recycled asphalt that he could spread on our driveway at a good cost.
Gower agreed to the work, but the men paved far more than he wanted and tried charging him far more than he expected. They then followed Gower to the bank so he could pay them right away. That's when Gower started to feel uneasy.
And I got as far to the bank and said to the teller, I'm here to pick up a bank draft for $10,000 to pay this guy who's waiting out in the parking lot. And she said, well, you're obviously under a lot of pressure. You should maybe think about it. And eventually I went back out to the guy in the parking lot and said, no, I'm going to pay after the weekend.
Gower says the men haven't returned. And since they left no contact information, Gower and his daughter looked up the only name they gave, Flocon Construction. Online, they found a company by that name all the way in Ontario and talked to the owner, George Flores. Flores says recently he's had 4 to 5 calls from people in BC who say that they've been scammed by people using his company's name.
I'm getting phone calls, like I said, threatening to sue me, to find out where I live. And it's because, and I have to explain to them, like, it's not me. I'm like, I'll send you my location services. Please Google me. And they're like, yes, I did. And you're the only thing that pops up. So obviously these people are just taking my name and they don't have any credentials.
Last week, Nanaimo RCMP warned the public of a group targeting West Shore, Sydney, and Victoria, scamming homeowners out of thousands of dollars.
And I thought, wow, it's really important to let people know that this is in our neighborhood. It's, that my dad experienced people driving up and down our road and spotting his driveway and coming to him.
If you are approached by someone you think is suspicious, Nanaimo RCMP is warning people not to accept offers of yard work or repairs and to report the incident to police. Karis Hogg, CBC News, Vancouver.
Unseasonably warm temperatures have put a damper on one of the busiest weeks of the year at Whistler Blackcomb. Some skiers and snowboarders are sharing their frustrations online. But as John Hernandez explains, operators argue conditions are improving by the day.
Warm and wet in the Whistler Village means a lot less powder than many here would hope for.
It's been kind of rainy. I haven't seen a lot of snow.
There's not a lot of it up there right now.
Unseasonably high temperatures driven by El Nino means there's no shortage of disappointment during peak season at Whistler Blackcomb. Nancy Howe and her family traveled from Arkansas to be here.
We'd hope that they would be a bit better, like a few more fluffy flakes.
This couple from California, understandably underwhelmed.
This was our first time, so we had heard great things about it, and I'm sure it's beautiful when it's covered in snow, but we just picked a crappy weekend, I think.
According to the mountain, the warm weather means a third of the lifts and just over half of the terrain are still closed.
Didn't really enable us to make a lot of snow. We've got some ski outs, but it was challenging to complete all the ski out routes down to the valley.
Over the past week, users took to social media to vent over snow conditions and congestion, but Vail Resorts says that doesn't paint the entire picture.
What they're showing is the ski outs in the valley, and that's very, very small percentage of the total footprint that we have up here. So it doesn't really represent the total experience that's available.
While there is snow on the peaks and at higher elevations, the overall user experience is mixed.
Yeah, you can have fun in it with the right board and like if you know what to do.
It's not overly bad, but mid-station down, it's spring break skiing and it's a little rough on your thighs.
Would you say it's worth it with the snow conditions, like buying a lift ticket?
No, I don't think so. No.
Why not?
There's no snow and we need some snow.
Operators say there's signs conditions will improve into the new year. Environment Canada says it's possible, but far from a guarantee.
It's not looking like it's going to be a really strongly snow-driven January.
Still, even if fresh snow is in short supply, many here are still finding the silver lining.
We don't get snow in Arkansas like this, and we love to ski, and we're with family, so you make the best of what it is.
Sean Hernandez, CBC News, Whistler.
Despite some people being frustrated about the lack of snow so far, one resort in the Okanagan says business is now booming.
And our colleagues right across the province are experiencing different weather patterns. We're in great shape. We're 94% occupancy on the mountain. We have visitors from all over the world. We have 80 runs open. We're opening the cliff today. There are snow-laden covered trees. The outdoor skating rink's open. The horse-drawn sleigh rides are going. The tubing park is happening. You know, we entertained just over 10,000 people yesterday. There's about 9,000 people sleeping on the mountain last night.
Balliol says Big White is in a unique position and acknowledges the rest of the industry is facing tough times. Dialing 911 in an emergency may seem obvious, but call takers are once again reminding you what an actual emergency is. Ecom has released its annual list of the top 10 nuisance calls to 911 this year. Our Zara Premji joins us now to share a list you don't want to be on. Zara, what were the shockers this year?
Well, Dan, there were actually plenty of shockers for you to take a look at. So as you can see, it's quite the varied list. Calling police because the traffic light was taking too long turning green. Your Uber Eats order was taking too long. And hey, the burger joint wasn't open when they were not supposed to be open. And let's not forget the McDonald's order was taking too long. While the list can seem comical, if you do call 911 for something like this, you could actually be slowing down a response to an actual emergency, be it a life-threatening injury, a shooting, or a robbery. Here are 3 that really stood out. All right, so you've got over here asking for directions home from the Drake concert. That was #1 on the top 10. This one, lost a nose ring down the shower drain. Not sure I've heard that one before in the list. And #3 that really stood out, the barber gave someone a bad haircut.
Zara, if someone calls 911 for something that is not an emergency, like we just heard, what then?
Well, Dan, the problem is call takers say no matter how absurd a call might be on the surface, they must treat every 911 call as an emergency until they can confidently determine otherwise. So every second that you're spending calling, talking about your fallen nose ring could actually be hindering a call from someone in a life-threatening situation.
This is why we are doing this campaign, just so we can sort of make people aware of what would be a nuisance call into 911, so we can keep those 911 lines free for in-progress crimes and emergencies that require immediate action.
Ecom says it saw a 13% increase in 911 call volume this year alone, handling more than 2 million calls so far in 2023. So the calls aren't going down, and they're asking British Columbians to be mindful and not call about things that are on this list.
Very good advice. Sarah Premji, thanks very much. It has been a busy first year in office for BC Premier David Eby. His government launched cost of living credits for people and businesses and unveiled a bill banning drug use in most public spaces, though as we told you, that's now on hold by a judge. The province also unveiled big housing legislation. Eby told CBC's On the Island host Gregor Craigie that British Columbians have already started benefiting from those measures.
So the laws that we just passed in the last session, they are rightly getting a lot of recognition because they are quite transformative about how we build housing, making sure that there's actually housing in single-family neighborhoods that a family would have a prospect of potentially being able to get into. But it's obviously not going to be overnight. So we're not relying entirely on that. We're also doing things like reining in the excesses of short-term rentals like Airbnb. It's having immediate impact. It doesn't come into full force until May. Already people are reaching out and saying, you know, I'm moving into a place that used to be an Airbnb. My colleague Josie just texted me, a friend of hers in Port Alberni, a place across the street was an Airbnb for a long time. Now a young family's moving in as long-term renters.
The toxic drug crisis has also kept the provincial government busy. BC's outgoing chief coroner Lisa Lapointe has said giving controlled drugs to people without prescriptions would help prevent more deaths. Eby says he does not agree.
My belief is we need to find those opportunities to intervene, the doctor, nurse practitioner, between the person with the addiction and the predatory drug dealer. But then we need to focus right now on recovery and support for treatment. So we have a seamless treatment initiative at St. Paul's. We have new work with the Canadian Mental Health Association, more than 100 beds that will be opening up to give people that chance to get into treatment. Because you just need one mistake with toxic drugs and then you're dead and or seriously brain injured. And that's what we're dealing with in this province, and it is a huge challenge. And I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do know that we probably agree on far more than we disagree on in terms of the way forward.
Canada, meanwhile, hit a record on national population growth through immigration this year. Eby says immigration is a huge benefit for this province, but has some concerns about international students.
The anxiety I have is that the numbers are such that we can't support these folks. We're seeing significant exploitation by employers, by landlords, by other people of these international students and temporary residents. They don't want to come forward and report it because they're worried they're going to be sent home. And we really need the federal government to be a better partner on this. The numbers are not in control. At the provincial level, we need to, and we are, doing our work around these institutions. And we've passed legislation around the agents working in other countries that are exploiting these students and taking fees from them for the schools that are operating here. But the only way we're going to be able to get our hands around this exploitation issue is if we work with the federal government in partnership. And right now, there's a bit of finger pointing happening from that level at us, when frankly, they really do need to have a serious look at that program, and we'll do our work on our end.
Eby also says his government will work in the coming year to make life more affordable for British Columbians. Meteorologist Russ LeCay joins us now with a first look at the weather as we barrel into the end of 2023.
Here we go.
Here we go. So what happens next?
Well, we're right on the edge. Last weekend of the 2023. We'll rip through your year in review of weather in about the next 30 seconds. See if we can pull this off. If you recall, January, February, March, all drier than average, a little cooler. We had a couple of snow events in both January and February, and even a little bit of skiff of snow into March. April, the only month out of the entire calendar year that was wetter than average until we got to December. It's been a little bit wet lately. But of course, May and June of this year kicked off the summer season in Vancouver. So much sunshine, it led to the tinder dry conditions and the record-setting wildfire season across much of BC. Your YVR numbers turned out to be 27% drier than average on the annual precipitation total, even though in December thus far we've had 21 wet days out of 29, and maybe another wet one to come. We're a little bit below average in terms of how many wet weather days we typically get in Metro Vancouver. There's some more rain coming tonight. Province-wide, stabilizing over much of the interior as that high-pressure ridge builds in. And with high pressure, you have fewer weather warnings. There is a limited visibility advisory for some dense fog in the North Columbia tonight. The wind warning for the North Island, that dies off over the course of the next 3-4 hours, give or take. So your province-wide forecast includes lots of sun for the interior areas again. It remains mild. Big changes in the days ahead. No big changes yet, Dan. I still think it's mild and it's wet tonight. There is more rain on the way.
Okay, Russ, we'll check in later. Thanks. If you're looking for an unusual workout that garners a sweet treat, you could try making mochi. The Nikkei National Museum and Japanese Gardeners Association hosted a mochi making event in celebration of Japanese New Year. One organizer warns this is a treat that has to be earned, and it's worth it.
Mochi typically happens for the new year, and it's a community event. So people get together and they work together to make a mochi. It does take quite a bit of strength and effort. So about after your fourth or fifth time, your arms get pretty sore.
This fluffy and moist, chewy rice cake, and it stretches out like cheese, but it's almost got a very subtle sweet flavor to it. And with addition to certain things like sugar and kinako and red bean, it all just starts to change its texture and its flavors.
New Year's Eve is just around the corner. We'll tell you why one agency says volunteering would make a very good New Year's resolution. Hear their case after this. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here tonight. 10 people involved in a plane crash 300 kilometers northeast of Yellowknife have been rescued safely. They've been taken to hospital, and as Juanita Taylor tells us, none of them have life-threatening injuries.
About 24 hours after going down in an airplane onto a frozen lake and sleeping in heated tents last night, 8 passengers and 2 crew members will have quite the story to tell now that they are back in Yellowknife and receiving treatment. The Air Tindy Twin Otter went down about 300 kilometers northeast of Yellowknife on Wednesday near the Diavik Diamond Mine. The Joint Rescue Coordination Centre Trenton started the search and rescue operation shortly after with a Hercules aircraft deployed from Winnipeg. Despite high winds and low visibility, 2 search and rescue technicians were able to parachute down to the stranded passengers and crew with life-saving equipment and supplies until they could be rescued. That came at daylight Thursday with improved weather conditions. Rescue teams picked up the stranded people and took them to a nearby airfield where medevac planes were waiting. 2 were seriously hurt, 6 are being treated for minor injuries, while 2 are uninjured. Air Tindy's president says the cause of the accident is still unknown.
We don't know. It was a ski aircraft. That's pretty normal in the Northwest Territories. We don't have a lot of airports or runways, so aircraft will take off on skis and land on a frozen lake. It was a private charter, but we don't know the conditions. We know that the aircraft had its accident right beside where it was intending to land. And we know that right afterwards that it was very windy with reduced visibility.
Canadian forces are expected to release more details tomorrow. The Transportation Safety Board will be investigating the incident. Air Tindy says it too will be launching its own investigation to find out what happened and how to prevent it from happening again. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Rankin Inlet, Nunavut.
Ready or not, we'll be ringing in 2024 this weekend. And with that is a traditional time to set New Year's resolutions. Oscar Cruz is on the board of directors of Volunteer BC. He's joining us now to tell us why we ought to consider volunteering more in the new year. Oscar, thanks for joining us. First of all, why is volunteering a good New Year's resolution?
Well, thank you for having me. Volunteering builds community and helps organizations stretch their dollars to fulfill their missions and reach their vision to help communities grow stronger. Most people have resolutions that are self-improvement. The gym is full for a month or so, and that's great, but we want you to consider the benefits of volunteering, participating, and giving. You can start small. You can do a one-time event, so one-time activity to explore your passion.
Now, we have plenty of examples of how volunteering helps communities, as you mentioned. What are those more personal benefits?
You know, you can build your resume. You can have professional development through that, have great references for your professional life, but you can also have physical and emotional health as a result of volunteering, make new friends, combat emotional stress, contribute to your community while bringing fun and fulfillment to your life.
So dedicating a chunk of time can be intimidating or difficult for some people. What tips do you have on how to get people into volunteering?
Well, there's two ways to volunteer. One is formal volunteering, and you can also do informal volunteering. If you require a record of your hours volunteering for school, for resume references, or school requirements, you will need to volunteer in a formal setting. Volunteer with a nonprofit organization, and also a nonprofit that aligns with your belief and what you're looking for. Then you'll get those records. You can go directly to their website, so you can call your local volunteer center to find out about that. But you can also participate in your community informally. This will not provide you with all the professional references and all the records that you need, but it will fill your heart with joy as you organize a block party, visit your neighbors and see what needs they have, organize community cleanups, visit shut-ins, work with people with disabilities. It will give you an emotional and health benefit, but also a great standing as a caring person in the community.
And lastly, Oscar, we appreciate your time. What do you hear from people who are beneficiaries of volunteering, be they community groups or perhaps, as you mentioned, older people who are just not as mobile as they used to be?
Well, service recipients are always grateful to have the extra help, the assistance to go and do what comes so easily for any other people, but some people have difficulties, physical or emotional difficulties, and they're grateful to have that opportunity to get that assistance. If you want more information about how to volunteer, you can visit us at volunteerbc.bc.ca or call your local volunteer center to find out what and how to get involved.
Oscar Cruz with Volunteer BC, we appreciate your time. Happy 2024.
Happy 2024 to you too.
Now, as you make your New Year's resolutions, you might be reflecting on the past year. We decided to look back at the stories that really spoke to you in 2023. Our Benit Breach joins us for a recap. Benit, you looked into some of our most read stories. What did you find?
Well, Dan, I have lots of stories to share with you. So basically, I got a spreadsheet of data from our digital producer and also looked at what kind of engagement these got on our social media, TikTok, and YouTube. And there might be some aha moments for some of our viewers or local stories or big international events. So take a look and see what you can remember. Starting in January, that's when a pigeon wearing crystal meth like a backpack was caught inside a prison yard in Abbotsford. This story even made it to the Stephen Colbert Show.
You can learn all about it in the new hit drama, Breaking Bird.
And in February, a totem pole belonging to the Newhawk Nation was removed from the Royal BC Museum in Victoria and returned to Bella Coola. There were lots of smiles, tears, and cheers.
And in March, a man from Merritt was shocked to find out that notes from his physiotherapist described him as a redneck hick in his health file. Interior Health told CBC News it was investigating, and Robert Monroe was referred to another physiotherapist at a different clinic. And in April, Vancouver police and city staff began removing the encampment on East Hastings Street. City officials argued the tents made the area more dangerous, like creating fire hazards. But many residents and advocates argued they had nowhere else to go. In May, it was a story on this education assistant who set up an OnlyFans account to make ends meet but was told to shut it down or risk getting fired. The district said the work was inappropriate. Kristen McDonald was eventually fired. She said there needs to be more attention given to low pay of education assistants and less stigma about sex work. In June, the president of the Surrey Gurdwara was shot dead. The story had a ripple effect around the world. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was also a pro-Khalistan activist. For years, the Indian government called him a terrorist, a claim that Nijjar repeatedly denied. Months later, Justin Trudeau accused India's government of being involved in Nijjar's death. India denied that allegation. In July, we shared the story of a single dad who makes $75,000 a year, and he said he couldn't find affordable housing in Vancouver for him and his son. The Premier acknowledged Carl Eaton's situation and said many British Columbians can relate. The Premier also said the focus was on getting more federal and local help to build housing faster. In August, BC was under a state of emergency as a fast-moving wildfire destroyed homes near West Kelowna. Nearly 200 structures were damaged or destroyed. BC had the most destructive wildfire season on record this year. Then in September, these posters surfaced for a whites-only parent and child group in Metro Vancouver. There was lots of outrage. The city of Coquitlam said in a release that the notices were racist because they explicitly exclude certain groups based on their race and said they have no place in the city. In October, 22-year-old Ben Mizrahi from BC was among those killed when Hamas militants attacked sites in Israel. Mizrahi graduated from King David High School. A post from the school described him as full of joy and had a smile for everyone and was always there to help. In November, there was big relief for Swifties when Taylor Swift finally announced her tour dates next December. She'll be playing 3 shows at BC Place. Even the Premier had asked for Swift to make a stop in Vancouver, and that wish came true. And this December, Vancouver Council passed a motion asking the province to get rid of Vancouver's elected park board. Mayor Ken Sim said the park board is outdated, and getting rid of it would save the city money. The province says it needs to see a detailed plan from the city about how it would engage with First Nations and transition its facilities under city governance.
The full variety pack, Benit. Amazing what we covered this year.
It's definitely been a lot. So again, many pieces from housing, healthcare, the cost of living. And it was definitely interesting to see what really resonated with people. And of course, you can read more about all of these stories on our website at cbc.ca/BC.
Benit Brage, thank you so much. Casualties rise and rescue efforts continue. After the break, the latest on Israel's incursions into Gaza.
Hello.
On March 2nd, 2022, I went into labor while only 21 weeks and 5 days pregnant. At the local community hospital that I was admitted to, we were told that we would lose the babies as they would be born that same day and they were not viable, so they would not survive and no efforts could be done to keep them alive.
Shortly after, a friend messaged me and sent me this Instagram video of a mom who had gone into gestation at the same gestational age and a second picture of her with 3-year-old twins now thriving. And so for me, that was my sign of hope. And through getting in touch with her, I found out also about Mount Sinai, which is a hospital that helps resuscitate preemies at that age.
And this account is called 22 Matters. They're an organization that advocates for 21 weekers and 22 weekers to be given life-sustaining measures. 1 hour after midnight on March 4th, 2022, when I crossed into the 22 weeks and 0 days mark in my pregnancy. Adia was born first at 1:22 a.m. She weighed 330 grams. And Adriel was born 23 minutes later, and he weighed 420 grams. They received the Guinness World Record, actually 2 Guinness World Records, one for being the most premature twins in the world to have survived to that age, and secondly for being the lightest twins in the world.
Please don't take my sunshine.
There are things that they have to work harder than other babies on. So, things like even crawling, sitting up, learning how to stand on their own. Good job, baby.
They both have very dynamic personalities, and it's starting to emerge day by day.
That's okay. So considering everything that they have been through, they're doing really well. They're both very active. They love climbing, crawling. Adriel is an explorer. We can't get him to stop climbing all over the furniture. Adia is very sweet. She's a little bit more shy and reserved, but once you get to know her, she is very loving.
I have to bake my grandma a cake. It makes her very proud.
Over this past year, we've had multiple chances to even talk to medical professionals around the world at conferences to raise awareness about the viability of babies born at that age, and this can have important policy changes.
We do hope this is a record that is broken, because that would mean that more babies are given the opportunity to live and thrive.
Ukraine says Russia has launched one of its biggest aerial attacks since the war began almost 2 years ago. It targeted cities across the country overnight, including the capital, Kyiv. As Julia Wong explains, at least 30 people have been killed and more than 100 are hurt.
Wave after wave of missiles and drones, relentless attacks from Russia. The most by air since the start of the war, Ukraine's military says. This was a scene in Zaporizhia, where a residential neighborhood was hit. One of several civilian locations, now sites of horror. The strikes hit a maternity ward, warehouses, and a shopping mall. I think they knew what they were hitting, one woman says. They hit with precision. That precision buried this man in the rubble. Emergency crews worked furiously to free him. In a video message, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky was defiant, saying, "We will respond to Russian terrorists for every strike." Russia's Ministry of Defense says they hit their intended targets, claiming they were military sites. The strikes are a reminder for Ruslan Misunya, who lives in Kharkiv, of what it was like when the war began.
When you wake up because of the explosions, and again, that was the massive attack, I can tell you definitely that the mood and the atmosphere here in Kharkiv is that we will survive.
The war has been dragging on for nearly 2 years, and in recent months, Western military support and funding has been waning. This expert says the Kremlin is taking advantage of that.
There's still no consolidated vision of what a Ukrainian victory would mean. And so I think that the Kremlin is capitalizing on this uncertainty.
One thing that is certain, the request from Ukraine for help. This is yet another sign for our partners to strengthen Ukraine with the required amount of air defense, says Ukrainian Air Force spokesperson Yuri Ignat.
In a statement, U.S. President Joe Biden is again pleading with a divided Congress to approve another aid package for Ukraine in the new year. And here in the UK, the government says it's sending 200 air defense missiles and vowing to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Julia Wong, CBC News, London.
Israeli forces are pressing further into southern Gaza. This is the scene after a deadly airstrike overnight in Rafah as rescuers scramble to save people trapped under the rubble. The area is overwhelmed with Palestinians fleeing the fighting. The United Nations estimates about 850,000 people are crammed into the area triple its normal population. More and more British Columbians turn to food banks this year. Coming up, why one local group is trying to reduce food waste. Stay with us.
Been fascinated with abandoned homes. We go out for drives on the back roads and you see them lurking in the trees just off the main drags, and I've always been fascinated by them. I like to stop and take photographs of them, and one day it just occurred to me that it would be a neat thing to make a miniature. My name is John Eaton, and I live in Middle Musquodoboit. I cut miniature boards to the right size to make the trim. I cut miniature shingles to the correct shape to be the shingles. It's not a sculpture so much as it is an homage to the actual construction techniques of the original homes.
And so how are you creating the ridges on it? Like, that's not what...
I sit there and painstakingly cut each shingle with my knife until they look right. The roof is falling in on itself. The old pole barn construction, it's actually made out of saplings. It wasn't made out of dimensional lumber. It was made out of poles. So when I rebuilt it, I used stir sticks as the poles to give it the proper feel. I don't like to spend a lot of money on materials, so I scour and source from the junk drawer. It's a rock wall foundation for an old building. I'll take a piece of my recycled foam core, using various tools that I have at hand, stones into it, until it looks like it's made out of many little layers. I love to be able to see some of the natural decay sort of working with the structure that the people have put there. It's kind of neat to just sort of see how these things go back to nature over time. Obviously I use old cereal boxes as building materials, framing. My foam core in here, which I make rocks and chimneys and things out of. Sometimes I'll use chunks of this as dimensional lumber. I've got a little piece of mesh in case I ever need window screening.
How long does it take you to
They take four or five old movies at least, sometimes a couple more. I don't really track my time on them, but I've certainly seen a lot of old movies.
Meteorologist Russ LeCate joins us now with a BC-wide weather forecast. You've been hinting at this all week.
Couple of hints.
Indeed. We're going to turn a little bit more chilly.
I think so. I think it's trending cooler, and that's province-wide, Dan. And we'll start to feel the difference here in early January, but much bigger differences in northern parts of the province. And the numbers we'll talk about before we get into those details, all the record highs. Think about that. On Wednesday, Dan and we spoke about 30 daily record highs set province-wide. Yesterday, an additional 26 records, including these numbers: 15 degrees, House Sound, Pam Rocks. I know that's a rock out there with a couple of seals and seagulls on it, but it is a place. 15 degrees, 14 in White Rock, 14 for Pitt Meadows, really mild across so many areas. And well, is it going to be warm again today? Yeah, we're rewriting the record books. Look at these numbers from earlier this afternoon. 14 degrees in Cultus Lake. We'll gather those numbers up this weekend and sort of put out the official records that were broken. Why is all this happening? Well, again, it's the southerly flow. We've watched this for several days from offshore. That jet stream over the eastern Pacific diving down towards the Hawaiian Islands, gathering that subtropical moisture, steering it right up along the BC coastline and all the warm air. Have a look now. There's a little forking going on in the jet stream. The main thrust is going to actually steer towards California. This branch of the jet will weaken and fall apart, and it's going to open the door to allowing colder air to descend from the north. There's a bit of Arctic air showing up, modified Arctic air. Short-term forecast, mind you, still stable, calm, dry over the interior, lots of clouds in the southern interior, more rain on the way from Metro Vancouver and the island tonight, more rain along the outer coast, still too mild for snow on top of Whistler in the short term. I want to show you something here I've got going, a computer model forecast run. So this isn't real data, this is out of a computer model, but it's pretty accurate with the rain on the coastline right now, mild across the interior, dry across the interior as well. Let's roll this ahead to New Year's Day. We can see a difference. Temperatures now dropping to 15 below by our temperature graph here, 15 to 20 below over the north. Cool, still dry across the interior. Look towards later next week. This is the end of next week, so 1 week from now, much colder. We're 25 to 30 below into Fort Nelson, 15 to 20 below across the central interior, sub-zero across the entire southern interior with some snow on the way, and a real close call here around the lower mainland. That freezing level comes down, temperatures back down as well. So near normal temperatures and maybe some interesting weather by the end of next week, Dan.
No kidding, as we head into a new year. Russ LeCay, thanks so much. A Vancouver charity is tackling food insecurity in a different way. Vancouver Food Runners prevents perfectly good food from going to waste by using technology. Our Gurpreet Campbell went right along with the group.
Vancouver Food Runners is a food rescue organization that connects places with surplus food with those that need it, saving it from going to waste. Today, we're going on 2 delivery ride-alongs with some volunteers, but before we do that, we're going to meet up with Tristan Jagger. She's the board chair of Vancouver Food Runners. So I saw on the Food Runners website that more than 50% of all food produced, I think, in the province gets wasted. Tell me about that. Is incredible.
Now, what we're trying to do is trying to divert that food from the landfill and get it to people that need it. And, you know, there's so many different reasons why that happens. You know, it can be that they just don't know where to give it away to, and we're trying to be the solution. So, you know, at the end of the day, if a grocery store has food left over, we want to be able to be there to pick it up. We have about 160 food suppliers now, so we're really getting our name out there in the last 3 years. We work with about 130 different nonprofits across the city. So we do about 25 to 30 food runs a day. So going to collect food from all over the city and taking them to the nonprofits that we work with. This program wouldn't run without our volunteers, but the thing is that over the holidays, we are always looking for more volunteers because we're getting more calls about food that needs to be picked up.
And we're doing a ride-along today.
Yes, you'll be going with one of our volunteers that we're picking up at Choices and taking it to one of our nonprofit partners. We try to match the food very close from the grocery store to the nonprofit.
Hey, nice to meet you, Kai.
Good to meet you. Good to meet you, Gurpreet.
And so where are we right now?
We are at Choices in Yaletown at the grocery store, where they are going to give us a donation of items that are hitting their expiry date.
Right, and then we're heading over to...
We're going to go to Gathering Place Community Center, which has a shelter and various services for people who are going through homelessness or getting out of homelessness. Let's do it. I'll get this.
So tell me about your day job.
I've been writing software my entire career. Started out in New York, and I've been in Vancouver for now 14 years.
Wow. And what made you want to get involved with this?
Well, I had been looking for some way to contribute positively to problems that we have in the city that I think need to be addressed collectively, and Vancouver Food Runners was a really easy way to do it. Every city has problems that need to be addressed, and this addresses 2 things at the same time, both the issue of food waste with the carbon emissions and also the issue of food insecurity. and the need to get food to people who are in need, the neediest in the city, really, and our problem with people going through homelessness. This is gathering place right here. Tony.
Hey man, how you doing?
How's it going, man?
I'm good, brother. Okay, what do we got today?
So we've got, a medium-sized thing today.
Okay, that's good. Oh wow.
So we've got
lots of bread, huh?
First we got the bread.
You got produce?
Yeah, this is.
Oh, good. All could use them all. Oh, we got protein too?
Protein and just some prepared stuff.
Oh, that's cool. Thanks, bro. Have a good one.
Take care, Tony.
We're now on our way to the Marriott Park Hotel to meet our next volunteer, Barb, and we're delivering some food to a youth center. Okay, great
Nice
to
to
meet you,
meet
Barb.
you.
And so we're meeting some folks here from the hotel.
We are. We're going to meet the chef. He's going to come in and they pre-make the food. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
So what the process is right now, every event we evaluate, we measure every food waste, and we looked at the leftovers, and as we know there's a bunch of leftovers are there from any events with the different many reasons, and that night we pack everything nice and fresh, we chill it right away, and we call the food runners, and it goes to the people who really need that food, and that's how we rescue all the extra food we have in the kitchen.
Thanks, you guys.
Welcome.
This is great. They'll love it.
Yes, feed people. Thank you.
How did you get involved with Vancouver Food Runners?
With retiring, I just really wanted to give back, and this organization just really, to me, it was a heart opener. I just felt so fulfilled. I get to know the businesses that I'm picking up from. I know them really well, and then dropping off, I get to know them, and so you actually create a relationship, which is also really nice. And I've learned so much about these different organizations. It's incredible. One of the first runs that I did was delivering pizzas from Fresh Sliced Pizza to downtown Eastside women's shelters. So I would take like 80 pizzas in my car, what's happening in the downtown Eastside. And I just wanted to feel more comfortable in it. And it's really helped me with that too. I do a delivery to, it's the Kitsilano Neighborhood House, and I only just started that delivery recently. And I had no idea, I drove by it all the time, this big, massive house. And, it's for women and children and these, single mothers who go there and they take their children, and it allows them to have food. I just have to pay a little bit of attention because this is where we're going to Direction Youth Services.
We're here. Okay.
Yeah.
I can help load.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, you to take that. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. See you soon.
So one last question for you then. We've delivered the food. You've been doing this for 2 years.
Yeah.
What keeps you coming back?
To me, it's just so inspiring and heartwarming. And when I deliver the food, I'm totally fulfilled. That's why I keep coming back.
This is our last 6 p.m. broadcast of the year. So after the break, we're going to recap the year in photographs and remind you of the best viral BC moments. Stick around.
Quel beau temps de l'année. Takimi, Joviaso Vitiki Malangalok Mimat, Ilonasi, Tamakoninga, Joviaso Gusikito, Chuchinik, Atohatania Kosi, Pimarealumning, Ohumaitunik, Atohatakalwak Suta, Joviasunimi Atoya Hamigata, Joviaswahdi, Tiana Kogun. And what a year 2023 has been. We have stood in solidarity, facing the rising consequences of climate change. We have grappled with the effects of global conflict and the pressures of living in modern times. Yet, we have also witnessed important strides in reconciliation, celebrated new chapters in history, and took steps towards making the internet a safer place for women and girls. J'ai eu le privilège de rencontrer des Canadiens et Canadiennes, de visiter des communautés, d'honorer des personnes qui transforment les défis en opportunités. People are adapting to changes with creativity, resilience, and above all, kindness. Their stories are poignant examples of the Canadian spirit and show us that we can each embody the Inuktitut word, ayuinata, which means never give up against all odds. Let us commit ourselves to action and to kindness, no matter how daunting the situation may be. Nous avons tous le pouvoir de contribuer au bien-être de notre pays. In this way, kindness, far from being an accidental act, emerges as a powerful and purposeful choice in the face of adversity. As we look to 2024, let us rekindle our connections to one another and face challenges, change, and progress with a renewed sense of unity. Happy New Year, Canada. Bonne année, Canada. Joveas utsenia kosi, Canada mi ngohadeka.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Enjoy groundbreaking contemporary works of theatre, dance, music, and multimedia at the annual Push International Performing Arts Festival, January 19th to February 4th. For the festival program and tickets, visit pushfestival.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
There are many ways, as we know, to look back on the year that was. One of them is through Vancouver's most viral social media moments. Our social media editor, Maurice Katz, gave Amy Bell the breakdown on BC Today. Have a look.
On our TikTok, actually garnered 6.5 million views. So we're talking about worldwide viral. This was when a prominent hip-hop artist in Canada, Drake, was scheduled to come to Vancouver. And for his first of 2 concerts, he canceled 2 hours before the show started.
That he did.
And understandably, Vancouverites were quite upset. Let's take a listen.
Okay.
I'm very sad. Been here since 6:30 in the morning, so yeah, I'm upset.
I planned this months in advance. My car, my B&B, everything was months in advance. I saved a lot of money, and we got here, and we were so happy about it. And just 2 hours before it's supposed to happen, they give us an excuse that the stage wasn't finished.
So the comments are filled with Drake song lyric puns.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm upset being the biggest
number
one. And one of the top comments also was that Taylor Swift would never.
Well, Taylor would never, but okay, now that you've mentioned Taylor Swift, I have a feeling that I know what the next viral moment is going to be.
Yeah.
Ms. Swift, it's David Eby, Premier of British Columbia. I'm not accustomed to begging, but for my own constituency of my loving and beautiful wife and my son, Ezra, please come to Vancouver, British Columbia. We'll treat you well.
Well, and then thanks to Evie, or maybe not thanks to Evie, Taylor did announce a concert here in Vancouver, and that started the race to find tickets.
Oh, and that was huge. It's Taylor's taken over. What's another pick for top viral Vancouver moment?
This user went out of his way to create a little art project for himself and took some pictures. He made a miniature version of the blue fence, a miniature version of that redevelopment application around those little gnome houses.
Goodness.
Obviously, this blew up. People loved it. And my favorite touch of the whole thing is that he even put a little piece of graffiti on the redevelopment application, just like they do in real life.
Good detail. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch our newscast on CBC Gem, the free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC. I will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. We'll see you then. And we leave you tonight with a compilation of our top photos from this year taken by our wonderful photojournalists.